What's up, everybody? Here we are, week 3 running backs. Gonna break it all down for you. Ton of great games this weekend, ton of good matchups, ton of guys that are going to be highly owned that probably shouldn't be. We're gonna get into all of that stuff here. But before I do, if you're new to this channel, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on notification bell. All those things really help. We've had a lot of growth throughout NFL, NASCAR, NBA season, so going to continue to keep growing. If you want to get more of my content, you can always subscribe to my Patreon for only $10 a month. You're going to get articles for every single position along with every single position every single week with along with all the showdowns articles, and you're going to get rankings for every single position for cash and GPP games. You're also going to get my injury notes, so you know what to do when inactives come out on Sunday, or if they're already ruled out, you'll know what to do as well there as well. So be sure to check all that stuff out. But that's really all I got to say. Let's get into the players, where we are going to start with the Buffalo Bills backfield. Devin Singletary is 4,900 and Zach Moss is 4,500. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it's going to be very negative. They are playing the LA Rams, one of the best run defense in the NFL, because of, there's this guy named Aaron Donald on the team. He's pretty good. So it's a tough matchup for these guys. They are home and are favored, so that's good for them. But we've seen Devin Singletary get 9 attempts and 10 attempts and 7 targets and 3 targets in his first 2 games. So Singletary, he's probably going to have, somewhere between probably 13 to 18 touches a game. And at 4,900, that's pretty good. And he's not a kind of guy who's going to just run straight up the middle. As you see, 7 targets in week 1 and then 3 last week. He's going to be used in the passing game a good bit. So, I think he's a fine play for tournaments, but I really don't want to go anywhere near either of these two in cash. And Zach Moss probably just isn't getting the ball a lot. He only had He's only had 12 touches last week, 9 in week 1. 13 in week 1, 8 last week. It's just probably not the spot to really go anywhere near that. He's going to get some red zone carries, but even if he just runs in like 1 touchdown, it's probably not going to be worth that much. So probably not someone I really want to get any ownership on. Next, we got the New England's backfield, which is just a mess. You got Rex Burkhead's 4,000, Sony Michel's 4,400, and James White's 5,300. We go look at their offensive versus defensive line matchup. It's going to be positive against the Las Vegas Raiders, who is not a very good run-stopping unit at all. But the volume for these guys is just, who knows? And I don't know if James White's going to play or not. He had that personal thing last week, which was really sad. But I don't know if he'll play this week or not. But in week 1, he only had 5 attempts and 3 targets, so that's really not the volume I want to look for. Burkhead, without James White, saw 12 touches, and Sony Michel saw 8. So there's just, Cam Newton, I think Cam Newton's really just their running back, so I don't really want to get anywhere near this running game. It's just not a team I want to attack like all year, so I just don't think I'm going to continue to go there. Not the spot I'm looking for. Frank Gore, $4,400 against the Indianapolis Colts. When we go look at the matchup overall, it's going to be a negative matchup for Frank Gore. The Colts have a pretty solid run-stopping unit. So Frank Gore, the run-stopping unit is pretty solid for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't like going there this week. It's just, he had 21 carries last game, but they're going to be playing from behind every single game. Like, the Colts are going to beat them by a lot. He's not going to get a ton of use. He just doesn't have the upside in the offense. There's not going to be a lot of scoring in this game. Frank Gore, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. Joe Mixon is going to be 5,900, which is pretty cheap for Joe Mixon against Philadelphia. He is going to draw a tough matchup. Philadelphia is a pretty good run-stopping unit. This is one of the higher total games on the slate, though, and they are not favored, which doesn't really work in his favor. And we saw when they were playing behind from the Browns last week that he really didn't get used a lot at all. No pass game rule, and just not even involved in the offense, which I think is a mistake, because I think Joe Mixon's a very talented running back. I think they need to use him more, but they weren't. In week 1, he had 19 attempts. In week 2, he had 16 attempts. Week 1, 2 targets. Week 2, 6 targets. So that's encouraging, getting some usage in the passing game, but I just think there's better options. This is a slate where the running backs are just too cheap, honestly, and I think you don't need to go to Joe Mixon. Like, you can fit in guys that are just relatively around the same price, in this game, honestly, and that you can fit in instead of having to get Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon's an interesting tournament option, but definitely not going to go there for cash. Still just not one of my favorite plays. Up next, we have the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb, 6,900, and Kareem Hunt, 6,100 against Washington. Kareem Hunt's too expensive at $6,100. for the usage he's getting. I mean, he's not getting 2 touchdowns every single week. Week 1 he had 19 touches, but they were playing from massively behind against Baltimore, so of course he's going to get more usage then. And then last week he only had 12, and he had I think 1 or 2 touches going into the fourth quarter. He just got used on that one drive a ton, and that was really it. So Kareem Hunt isn't getting 2 touchdowns a week. So I think that's too expensive for him. This is a spot where they are going to be playing from ahead, though, so running backs are going to be very good use. So I do like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb last week when they were playing from ahead, they weren't absolutely getting dominated. He had 23 touches, and I think that's going to be the norm for when you have the Browns playing from ahead or even a little bit of a closer game. The Washington football team shouldn't make this game shouldn't be close. Cleveland should beat them pretty easily. So I think Nick Chubb is a very solid option at 6,900. I don't mind him in all formats. Maybe some other guys I'd just rather get to because they're pass catching role in cash lineups. But for GBPs, yeah, Nick Chubb is a full go for me. Definitely someone I want to have some ownership on. Up next, we have James Conner for Pittsburgh playing up against the Houston Texans, and the Houston Texans defensively suck. Conner's $6,700 on Draftkings. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, it's a negative matchup, but I mean, most running backs matchups are negative. It's one of the better ones on the slate. This is a 45-game total where they are favored. They are going to be playing from ahead, and last week was the week where he was healthy. He had 16 attempts and 2 targets. I think that goes up a little bit. I think they were just trying to, ease him back in, but he looked fine. I'm sure this week he gets probably about 20 to 23 touches, especially if they're up by a lot this entire game, which they should be. I mean, Houston really isn't that good, so they're going to be playing from ahead. He is going to get some usage in the passing game, and it's a very good matchup. So James Conner is someone I definitely like on all fronts. David Johnson up next against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the other side of this game is 5,400, and I don't want to play David Johnson at all. He's got the worst matchup on the slate. Pittsburgh has a very, very good run-stopping unit, and Houston Texans are terrible run blocking. Yeah, now David Johnson will be used in the passing game. He's had 4 targets and 5 targets in weeks 1 and 2. But they are not favored in this game. I just don't think this is a spot where I really want to go to him. He's just not. The matchup just sucks. I mean, it's not too expensive or anything. It's just this is not a spot to go after really anybody on the Texans this week. And David Johnson is probably the worst one in my opinion to go after. So do not want any David Johnson this week. Jonathan Taylor. I mean, last week we loved him. He smashed. He's still too cheap. I mean, he's just too cheap. They play the Jets first off, where they're gonna, kill them. They're heavy favorites at home. And last week, Jonathan Taylor had 28 touches. That's too cheap for 7,000. 28 touches is close to McCaffrey range last year. We're getting there. And I mean, I don't know if he's gonna get it every week, but against the Jets, he probably should. If he's the only running back they're running the ball with. At home, favored against a terrible defense anyway, and just an absolutely a game they're going to destroy them. So he's going to be getting a ton of run because they're going to be playing from ahead. So Jonathan Taylor, definitely someone I want to get a ton of ownership on this week. Still like the price 7,000. He'll probably be popular again, but that's fine. I mean, he should be an 8K running back, and honestly. So should Derrick Henry, but Henry has been struggling to start the year. 2 rough games, but the usage is still there. He's only $7,800 now, and the Minnesota Vikings defense is horrible. This and those 2 matchups, Taylor and Henry matchups, are the best on the slate by a mile. Minnesota is going to be a team I want to attack with running backs all year. I mean, we saw Taylor have a very good game against them last week. They are on the road, but they are favored, a 47.5 game total. They should be playing from ahead, and it is a high-scoring game, so Derrick Henry could get into some scoring. We know he's a touchdown machine, so I think the touchdowns should start coming back up. Just haven't seen it early on in the season, but I think that's fine. We've seen 31 and 25 touches carries the first 2 weeks, and then 3 and 2 targets the first 2 weeks. So getting even a tiny bit of usage in passing game is fine, and only 7,800 for Derrick Henry. We know he's going to bounce back soon. Usually he's a second half of the season player anyway, which we're not at that point obviously right now, but this matchup's just too easy to pass up. I mean, Minnesota's rush defense is like garbage, so give me all to Derrick Henry this week. Melvin Gordon III last week drew a tough matchup against Pittsburgh, and he's still 5,800, but he's drawing another tough matchup against the Bucs. This is a team where they are one of the best rush defensive teams in the entire league. I know that's probably shocking to some people because we're used to just the Bucs being a bad defense, but they're a very, very good run defensive unit. A tough matchup for Melvin Gordon here. They're not favored. They're on the road, and or I don't know if they're on the road. They may be at home, and they're not favored. And it's just a tough matchup, and it's a low game total, so probably not somewhere I want to get to. The volume has been there, though. Last week he had 22 touches, so the volume is there. Someone maybe to take some shots in tournaments for a lower owned guy, but I don't think I hate the matchup against Tampa Bay. I mean, we just they don't allow I know Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey have made the run defense look bad, but it's not because they're running the ball up the middle and scoring. They're catching passes on the outside and scoring. Melvin Gordon doesn't offer you a ton of pass catching upside, so probably not someone I want to get to as much. Josh Jacobs, at $7,300 going against New England Patriots. This is going to be a tougher matchup for him as well. We saw when they started playing from behind, he didn't get the usage that he had in week 1. So I think they are like 7-point underdogs here. So I don't think Josh Jacobs is someone that I really want a ton of ownership on. It's a tough matchup for him. It is going to be a high-scoring game. I just think there's other running backs in that price range I'd rather get to. Definitely someone playing GPPs, but if I'm going for cash, not going to be one of the guys to go after, and definitely not one of my top tournament plays either, but I will have some ownership to him. Austin Eckler, Joshua Kelly. Yeah, we know how bad that the Carolina Panthers are against the run. Eckler's 6,800 and Joshua Kelly's 5,000. So I think Eckler's going to get a lot of ownership this weekend just because Carolina just sucks against the run. But Joshua Kelly had 23 carries and 3 targets last week. He had 26 touches last week, and Austin Eckler had 20. So I think Kelly's not going to get a ton of ownership, and this is someone who has the same amount of upside, and he's getting all the inside to 5 carries. So if they're getting down there to the inside of 5, Joshua Kelly's getting the ball. It's not Eckler. I think both of them are very good plays just because that matchup's perfect. They're going to get a ton of usage. Justin Herbert now is going to be starting. So, and when Herbert started last week, they just ran the ball. Like, literally, they ran it, how many times is that? 46 times? Like, I mean, if they continue to do that, both these guys are in play, and I'd like Kelly a little as a better GPP play. Both are fine. No, Eckler's good for cash. I would not play Kelly in cash. I don't think that 23 touches is going to be consistent. But if he's getting like 16, 17, then yeah, that's going to be very, very good. So, but yeah, I like both of them for tournaments. Eckler for cash, Kelly not so much for cash. Ezekiel Elliott, I think we're just going. Honestly, I'm getting to the point where I think we just got to. He's in play every week. He's kind of starting to remind me of McCaffrey last year, not because of the usage, just because of how good this offense and how explosive this offense is. $8,300 against the Seattle Seahawks, whose rush defense is not good. It's grades out as a good matchup for Zeke. This game is a 55.5 game total. They're not favored, which does not really scare me with Zeke. I mean, as you can see in his 2 games, he has 4 and 7 targets. Last week, when they were playing from behind against Atlanta, yeah, he had 7 targets, 29 touches that game. So he's game flow independent. I'm not worried about him at all. I love the matchup against Seattle. I love how many points are supposed to be scored. So yeah, I love Zeke again this week. I think it's a fantastic play once again. Deion Lewis, and then I guess Devontae Freeman. I don't know if Freeman's going to play. The Giants just signed him, so I don't think he's going to play this week. I don't know. I don't want any of this matchup, though. I mean, they're just this total's 40.5. They're underdogs, and they're at home. I mean, I'm going to stay away from the Giants this week. I think it's too risky to play them. That offensive line is complete garbage. Saquon Barkley averaged 1.8 yard per carry this year. So in the short time he played behind that offensive line, that's completely terrible. So I'm just going to stay away from the Giants running backs this week. I'm really probably staying away from this game completely overall, but the running backs are a little bit interesting for San Fran, so we'll talk about them. Miles Sanders was the other running back from that Cincinnati Philadelphia game. He's $6,400. When we go look at the matchup, it is going to be a pretty solid matchup for Miles Sanders. Cincinnati's not a very good run-stopping unit. Last week, Miles Sanders had 27 touches, 20 on the ground, 7 through the air. They're a home favorite team with a 46 game total. One of the higher total games on the slate, they're going to score a lot, so he's going to get a ton of usage in the pass and on the ground. So I do like Miles Sanders. The difference this year is there's no Jordan Howard in Philadelphia. So like, you worry about some of these guys that have a big pass catching role, that when they get ahead, are they going to get the carries when they're getting ahead? But no, he's not. Miles Sanders is getting the carries on the ground. He's going to have the ball. So Miles Sanders definitely someone I want some attention on. Antonio Gibson for the Washington football team is $4,700 against the Cleveland Browns. Gibson, the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it's not great, but it's not horrible either. The Browns are a very good pass rush team, but run defensively, they're okay. I mean, they're not great, but they're not bad. They are going to be playing from behind, which does fit into Antonio Gibson. I mean, 2 targets in each of the last 2 weeks isn't a ton, but 13 carries last week, 2 targets last week. I think that is probably where he's probably going to be around a 13 to 18 touch a game player. So I think he's fine. Someone who's cheap enough that I want to get some ownership on. And I don't think the Browns defense is that good. Like, they're going to be playing from behind. He'll get usage in the passing game, so definitely want some ownership there. We got the Chicago Bears going against Atlanta. Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery. I don't want any of these two. Cohen 4,300, Montgomery 5,700. When we go look at the matchup overall, it's actually a pretty bad matchup. Atlanta's been a pretty solid run-stopping team so far this year. Well, I don't know. Zeke did good, but Zeke also got the ball 29 times, so you're not going to get running. Either of these two are getting the ball 29 times. Tariq Cohen's has gotten 9 touches week 1 and 6 touches week 2. Montgomery last weekend had 19 touches, and I mean, he didn't even play the whole game. He got hurt for a little bit, missed some time, and came back. So, I mean, I think he's going to be involved, but I just don't like the matchup. I mean, they're not favored against Atlanta, so they're not going to, like, Tariq Cohen probably gets more usage in the passing game because they're going to be playing from behind. But I think I want to attack Atlanta more in the air this year than on the ground, so I'm going to continue to do that. So David Montgomery probably not someone to in play for me. DeAndre Swift and Adrian Peterson, this is another backfield I just kind of want to stay away from. Peterson saw 17 touches week 1. Last week he saw 7. DeAndre Swift 8 in both weeks. I don't want to go either way. I don't think either of them have the upside for me in the tournament. I don't think either of them have the floor for me in cash. So I know it's a fantastic spot. This game's going to be super high scoring, but I just want to attack Arizona from the pass. I want to use Detroit in the passing game, not really the running game as much. So definitely going to be looking to use those pass catchers instead of these running backs. Dalvin Cook, he's had a rough start to the year. He bailed us out on touchdown last week. He's $7,600 going up against the who do they play? The Titans. Jeez. And they're not favored. They are at home, though. It's a closer game, so I mean, the reason Dalvin Cook hasn't seen a ton of usage is because they've just been playing from so far behind. I mean, they were down by like 30 to Green Bay, down by like 20 to the Colts. They have to play from behind. Dalvin Cook isn't going to get used as much. This game figures to be a little bit closer, but I don't honestly think it will. I think Minnesota's complete garbage, and I think Tennessee's pretty good. So I think that Tennessee beats them by a good bit. So Dalvin Cook, I'm a little bit worried on. Definitely don't want to touch him in cash. And in tournaments, I think he's fine, but still someone I probably don't want to get a ton of ownership on. He scares me a little bit. I just don't like the fact of how his usage has been, and that, like, it's not that they're not willing to give the ball to Dalvin Cook, because they are. It's just they're getting blown out, and when you get blown out, the running backs just don't get used a ton if you're not like a great pass catcher. And Dalvin Cook's, solid in the passing game, but not like someone they're going to use a ton in the passing game. So I just don't think that's somewhere I really want to go. Todd Gurley has been terrible to start the year. He is. I was talking to some friends the other day, and Todd Gurley is like the 5th option in this offense, because you have 1 and 2, obviously Julio and Ridley, but Russell Gage is seeing like 10 plus targets a week, and then Hayden Hurst is getting involved in the game too. I mean, yeah, Gurley had 21 carries last week, but that's only because they were playing from ahead. In a close game, Todd Gurley isn't going to be getting those carries, and now he plays Chicago this week. Chicago's a pretty good run defense, and I just don't want to get there. I don't think this is the spot for Todd Gurley. I don't really think there's going to be a lot of spots for Todd Gurley. He's going to have to be really cheap for me to really want to get there. 5,800, like at 5,800, like I think there's just other guys around that price range. Like I'd rather pay 400 for Leonard Fournette, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but I would. I'd rather take chances in tournaments on Henderson and Malcolm Brown. I'd rather go with David Montgomery, in all honesty. I'd rather go Melvin Gordon. Like, there's just guys I'd rather get to than Todd Gurley in this week against the Bears. So, not someone I really want to go to. Mike Davis, I think, is going to be a very popular cheap play against the Chargers, but I don't want to play him at all. He's one of those guys I was talking about who I just don't think is going to be too owned. They're going to be playing from behind. I mean, yeah, and when McCaffrey went down, Davis saw 8 targets, but I don't know, man. Like, this is a good run defense. Like, the Chargers' defense overall is very good. And I just don't think this is a spot. On the road, not favored. Probably isn't where I want to get Mike Davis at all. It reminds me of last year when we had Malcolm Brown in LA. Gurley was out, and then you had they were playing against the 49ers. Not to as much to an extreme, but like, yeah, he's cheap and he's going to get the ball, but he's not going to do anything. And that's what I feel like Mike Davis. He's just not going to do anything. They're going to just pass the ball more. They're going to use Curtis Samuel more. They're going to use DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson more. Maybe get Ian Thomas involved. They're just going to pass the ball more. I don't think, because they just don't have a running back that's good. I would watch out for Trenton Cannon. He's on this team too. And I wouldn't count him out of the backfield. Like, maybe he's someone to take a shot on. Like, I don't think this is Mike Davis going to get all the touches. So probably not someone I want to get a ton of ownership on. Ronald Jones and Uncle Lenny Fournette. 5,000 Ronald Jones, 6,200 Leonard Fournette. Fournette I'm fine with. I mean, last week, Leonard Fournette, 17 touches, 5 in the air. And Ronald Jones fumbled. I think he lost his job, which sucks. They are favored against the Denver Broncos, who don't have like a very good run defense or anything, nothing special. So definitely someone I want to get some ownership on is Fournette this week. I think he's just going to get some more usage in this game, on this team. Looked pretty good in Tampa last week, and I've never thought Leonard Fournette was ever good. So the fact that I just said Leonard Fournette looked good, you should be surprised. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's a fine play here. Ronald Jones probably not going to go there at all. I think he's going to get phased out of his offense. I could be completely wrong, but he did not look good last week, and Fournette did. And when that kind of stuff happens, coaches just give it to the one who's good, and Fournette looked good. So that's probably what's going to happen moving forward. Kenny and Drake, one of my favorite plays, running back plays on the slate. $6,000 going against this Detroit Lions team with the 54.5 game total. They're out at home, and they are favored in this game, although I don't think that really is. They're favored, but not by like a ton, so it's going to be a closer game. a shootout kind of game. And Kenny Drake gets used in the passing game and in the running game. Saw 22 touches last week and 18 in week 1. He'll probably be in that range, probably 18 to like 24 touches, depending on the game script for Kenny Drake. So definitely someone I want to get some ownership on. The LA Rams backfield, I don't even know what's going on. I don't think Cam Akers is going to play, but Darrell Henderson saw 15 touches last week. Malcolm Brown also got hurt. So if Brown and Akers missed, Darrell Henderson is probably the cheap running back this week I want to go with more than anything. They do play the Bills. See, I just don't like any of these cheap running backs. Like, people are going to be playing them in cash. I don't think you need to play them in cash. Like, there's cheap receivers I'd rather play than the cheap running backs this week. So at 5,400 against the Bills, I mean, it's scary. That matchup sucks. It's brutal. But he's going to have the ball, so he's fine. And I think Darrell Henderson is probably more talented than people give him credit for. Then we got Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson Jr. for the San Francisco 49ers. This is against the Giants team. They're favored. They're on the road favored, but this is just, I just think this is going to be, I don't know, who knows who's going to get the carries. Like, everyone this week's like, oh, Jerick McKinnon time. Well, Jeff Wilson's there too. Like, these two guys are going to get the looks. I mean, because Coleman just got put on the IR. Mostert's already out. So it's these two guys. I think they split the carries. I think they're GPP only plays. I think people are going to try to play them in cash, and I don't think they should play them in cash. But in GPPs, they're definitely worth the shot, in my opinion. I'll definitely be getting some ownership to them in GPPs. And then we'll close this thing out with Chris Carson in Seattle, going up against the Dallas Cowboys at $6,600. Last week, we saw Chris Carson see 20 touches, 17 on the ground, 3 through the air. He's going to be used in the passing game and the rushing game. And he's had 6 targets week 1 in a game that's supposed to shoot out. They're at home. They're favored. He's going to get a ton of usage. Dallas's defensive line rushing has not looked good this year. So definitely someone I want to go after is Chris Carson. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say on this running back slate. Tried to make the video a lot shorter for you guys for 2 reasons. Because 1, I hate recording an hour-long video. And 2, I don't think you guys want to sit around for an hour-long video. If you want to get more detailed data information, you can always go subscribe to my Patreon. I'll put the link in the description below. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend of football. And be sure to leave a like. Thank you guys so much. And good luck to all of you.